Hello, everyone. Hi. A very, very good morning to everyone who's joining us live here at our Grab Regional HQ in One North. And a very, very big hello to everyone joining us online. Thank you so much for waving at me. Welcome to today's Thought Leadership Seminar hosted by our amazing GrabForBusiness team titled Developing a Hybrid Workplace Strategy. My name is Michelle and I'm from the Grab People Operations team, and I'm really, really happy to be your host for today. As part of today's event, we will be discussing more on the challenges of moving to a hybrid workplace and the future of work. And we've also invited some amazing speakers who will be sharing ways in which you can cultivate a secure, connected, and collaborative workplace for your workforce as they transition back to office after over 2 years of working from home. So here's what you can expect for today's event. After a short introduction and icebreaker, we will go into a panel discussion with our guest speakers. We will also have a time of Q&A, and we will be sharing an overview of what is GrabForBusiness. All right, if you have any questions for our speakers along the way, feel free to put it into Slido. You can go ahead and scan that QR code right there, or you can visit www.slido.com and just enter the code there, 7267287. All right. Without further ado, I would love to introduce and invite up our speakers for today. First up, please give a warm round of applause to Alex Sweeney. Alex is a former head of human workplace experience for Jones Lang LaSalle, APAC. Alex, why don't you join me over here? And prior to this, he was the global head of workplace experience at Standard Chartered Bank. His passion is in measuring to review insights. So today, Alex partners with disruptive independent companies across people, place, and technology. And he also works with companies like Leesman, COLCI, and Ion Consulting as well. All right. So next up, we have Gareth Poe. Please help me to give a warm round of applause to Gareth, who's a senior HRBP and employment counsel for almost 2 decades. Gareth, come over here. Yeah. And he specializes in organization development as well as labor law advisory. And he's currently with CH Robinson as the head of HR for Southeast Asia. Next up, we have our Grab representatives. We have Mr. Ronnie Tan. Ronnie is the head of people and business partner at Grab, and he leads the Trusted People Advisors team that connects Grabbers and ideas to build people capability and a sustainable winning organization driven by our Grab way. He's been with Grab for 6 years already. So yes, and he comes with more than 25 years of experience across software engineering, consulting, and HR. Last but definitely not the least, we have Mr. Amit Patel. Amit joins us with more than 15 years of enterprise software experience, and he currently leads the diverse regional team responsible for GrabForBusiness. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone, for this. We'll go into a time of a panel right now, but before we go into the panel discussions, let's start with a short icebreaker, all right? To get a sense of how everyone here feels and online as well. How do you feel about returning to the office? So to participate, just scan this QR code, all right? And go to www.menti.com and you can enter this code as well, 73894348. All right, just 5 very short questions for all of you. So yeah, let's head on over to Menti. But the questions are all about how excited are you to go back to the office? All right, can we go over to the Menti slide, please? In the meantime, how excited are we to all be here today? They are not a Zoom background, everyone. These are... All right. Okay, so, oh, wonderful. Okay, we've got our Menti up. Wow. Okay, how excited are you to go back to the office? Okay, the... 3 very honest people went, not at all. All right. 22 neutral. All right. Okay. Okay. But at least I see that there's a good majority, about 50% of you are still very, very excited, as I am to be here as well. Next question, please. Next question is, what excites you about going back to the office? Is it the office ambiance, team collaboration? Is it FaceTime with your colleagues, FaceTime with your manager? Is it just more productive overall? Gareth, why did you laugh there? All of the above. Is it you wanted an option that, or none of the above? I think what excites us about coming back to the office is also that we have this beautiful new HQ, right? Okay, so a lot of people say it's about, you know, having FaceTime with your colleagues, and of course, Team collaboration is so much easier when it's done face-to-face, that's for sure. I'm a little bit sad that, yeah, Ronnie just pointed out that no one's excited to meet their manager. Okay, maybe managers, if there are any managers in the room, there's something to take note of. Let's move on to the third question. All right, the third question is, which of these working arrangements do you prefer most? Is it remote, completely back to the office, or a mix, a hybrid, part remote, part in office? I think I kind of know the answer. All right, an overwhelming majority says hybrid, and I do believe that's why we're all here today, to see how we can get the best out of a hybrid work arrangement. Let's move right along to our second last question. And the second last question is, how often do you conduct face-to-face meetings? Is it every month, once a week, daily, once in every 2 months, or entirely remote? Okay, this one, we see quite a lot of movement here. Purely remote. Okay, so we do have a few people in the room who conduct entirely Zoom meetings, I'm guessing. Okay, but still, I would say a good half says at least every week, right? Okay, and our last question for the icebreaker is, how can your company encourage you to report to office? What would make it easier for you to come back? Is it the free meals? Free transportation? Is it flexible working hours? Ooh, office renovation. And you know what, Michelle? I just don't want to come back. That is an option as well. Okay. I'm glad to see that free lunch isn't the most popular item. But okay, flexible working hours followed by free transportation. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for participating in that short icebreaker. And I think all the panelists here also have a little bit of an idea of how we're feeling in the room. So right now, let's just take some time and talk to our panelists on their take on the future of work. Oh, right. Sorry, I was supposed to also share about some of the research findings, right? And so this is from EY's 2021 Work Imagine Reimagine Employee Survey. And I think a lot of the findings actually already match with some of the sentiments from the ground, right? That even though pandemic restrictions are slowly easing, only 15% of employees want to come back home. So not everyone is super excited to be back yet. And they agree with you on your last question. 90% of them want that flexibility in choosing where they work and how much time they spend at work as well. And yeah, it shows that hybrid work arrangements are here to stay. They do prove that there is improvement in productivity and creativity. So let's hear from our panelists, all right? And let's go into a couple of discussion topics. So the first one, this would be for Gareth as well as for Ronnie. According to One Institute of Policy Studies report, 41 to 52% out of 2,000 employee respondents felt that a flexible work arrangement should be the norm in the workplace. So do you think hybrid work is here to stay in a post-pandemic world? Maybe we can start with Gareth and then go to Ronnie.
Thanks, Michelle. And thanks everyone for coming here today. So I think to answer this question, first we need to understand how did this post-pandemic hybrid work came about. We all know that for the last 2 years, 2-ish plus years, right, we have been stuck. And this professor called Anthony Koss from TNM University actually said, he coined this term Great Resignation from post-pandemic, or rather pre-pandemic period. I think what is important to understand is these 2 years have made us behave in a different way, that everyone is used to working from home. And in the past pre-pandemic, right, we are used to arranging our lives around work. If you need to work, let's say from 9 to 5, right, you have to send your kids to school and what have you. Because of a pandemic, we are forced to think about how do we arrange our work around our lives, which is a big difference. So the direct answer would be that yes, it will be here to stay. And more importantly, the longer answer would be this will more be there to stay because of a habit that we have today. And people are now understanding, okay, work is important, life is important, how do I balance it? So this is one behavior that will be very difficult to change, or if it ever changes. Ronnie?
Thanks, Garrett. Actually, Garrett did a very good job to explain it, right? I thought the answer I should say, yeah, agree, hybrid will be here to stay. But I
Short,
guess the
short and
audience-
sweet, Ronnie.
Yeah, I guess the audience will expect me to actually share more color to that, right? Now, how I think about that is like, if all of us just goes back to 2 years ago, whenever I think about work, you think about working in a place, isn't it? You say, hey, where do you work? Oh, I work in CBD. Oh, I work in One North. I work in Singapore, like working in a place. However, now if you sort of ask people, where do you work? They no longer will say that, hey, I work in a place, isn't it? In fact, they will say that working in a place now have actually evolved to working in a space where you have teammates that come together, either digitally or in this case, physically. So now what happened is that in the last 2 years, unfortunately or fortunately, we were all thrown into a very big experiment that without a choice, from working physically, coming together, we are all asked to work remotely, isn't it? In the last 2 years, there are irrefutable data points that shows that we all can be productive. We all, in fact, can work remotely. However, in the last 2 years, every one of us have different situations, and either personally or professionally. So what happened is that last 2 years, we've been hearing from an employee too. And in fact, the employee is also saying that, hey, you know what, we can work remotely, but sometimes if we're given a choice, we want to come together. So this is where we say that we work in a space. Now, what we hear from employees is that, in fact, employees now saying that we want to be able to have a space that we can gather in proximity, that we can be able to come together to collaborate, to come together to socialize, just like what we are all doing. And equally important, come together to see our colleagues. So having said that, it's a longer color to my explanation. Yes, I believe that hybrid is here to stay. But I must say that perhaps a month from now, if we have the same forum again, the answer may evolve.
Yeah.
We are all still learning. Okay, I'm learning. Unless somebody says that I know the future, I wouldn't dare to say that. So for now, yes, hybrid is here to stay.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you, Ronnie and Gareth, for that. And I just love what you said. We used to work in a place, now we work in a space.
Yes.
So great start to the discussion. Let's move on to the second discussion topic. This one is for, what are some of the challenges or things to consider in today's hybrid work environment? So we heard from Gareth and Ronnie, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. How can we cope with these challenges? So Amit, what do you think about this?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking the time this morning as well. I think from my view, I think some of the challenges around what we need to consider in hybrid is really organizations still need to kind of define what hybrid is. Work from home has always been there before the pandemic. There's always been the opportunity to use Team or Zoom. It's only the pandemic has actually put us in the situation whereby we had to make this choice of work from home. Now, of course, with markets opening up or cities opening up or countries opening up, there's a lot more opportunity for people to get back together. Now, and I was talking to Alex about this earlier. I think it really depending on your industry, your type of role, the type of people you lead, the type of jobs that you do, it really depends on if you're able to work in a hybrid environment, or if it's always going to be, or if you can work remotely. There are, of course, jobs that exist today that can all be done remotely, and there are some that are very, very difficult to do remotely as well. I think the other challenge as well is really around all of the data points that Gareth and Ronnie mentioned about, being able to work from home and being productive. Well, of course, if you're in a situation where everything's locked down and your only output is work, then you're going to take a lot more effort in doing that work to pass the time. And you will find that as time goes on, if you are in a world that's open, and you've got work to do, and you're also able to go and have lunch with your friends or go for a beer with your friends or do whatever it is, then you may be more prone to adding more of social activities into your work as well, where I think then your productivity go down. The other aspect I think really is around collaboration. We've got, even in my team today here at Grab4Business, I have a young team that are keen to learn, keen to collaborate. And I find that it would be very, very difficult for them to be able to do that if it was always going to be a remote environment. So from my perspective, I think organizations need to look at ways of balancing types of roles, types of industries that you're in, to be able to really find that balance and then start to take data points going forward on how is the best way for your organization to work. Because again, when I spoke to Alex, there's no one size fits all. So you need to kind of look at it going forward in terms of how it will work for you and your situation.
Yeah, Alex, you guys were discussing this earlier. Is there anything you'd like to add on this point?
Yeah, I think, so thank you for the invite, by the way.
Thank you for being here, Alex.
Yeah, and it probably ties in with just two things on my mind. The first, everybody can hear me okay? The first thing is really, the older I've got and the more I'm supposed to have become an expert in this field of workplace, the more I realize it's important to be humble and to know less, because all of us, when we're labeled as experts, we have the sense we have to have the answers, where the truth of the matter is everyone in this room is an expert, and everyone in this room has an opinion on how they might like to work. And it's not for me really to sort of cast my opinions on how I feel you should work best. It's really about listening to you and understanding that. So yeah, I think we talked about it's not an easy subject to answer. But there has to be a method in how you approach it. And I think I hope that's something that we'll talk about further as we go forward.
Well, thank you, Alex. All right, let's move on to our third topic. So as stated by Indeed's article, The Pros and Cons of Working from Home in July 2021, there are more advantages on a work from home setup. How do you engage and motivate your employees in a hybrid work environment? So, Alex, how would you do this?
Well, that's not an easy question to answer, is
Not
it?
at all.
And again, it goes back to my original point about listening to people over advocating what should be done. I think a great starting point is to ask people how they're doing. And I know that sounds really obvious, but in my discussions, or actually, one of the great things, I'll share it with you. I've not worked for about 5 months, and I've had the time of my life. And
everyone in this room just got really jealous of you, Alex.
And I don't mean it in the conventional sense. I have been working. We are always working. We're always completing tasks. And it's been a great chance to step back and actually look at what's going on. So I have been doing that. I've been engaged in sort of personal coaching on a circle of life basis, because to Gareth's point, it's really important to understand what really motivates employees intrinsically or extrinsically that's not linked to work. So I think more and more work needs to be tied to what the motivations of the individual are in their personal life, and not the other way around. Most people only have jobs. You know, we don't have careers. So we need to remember that. There's very few people have careers and are doing exceptionally well. For the vast majority of people, they have to pay the mortgage, they have to pay the bills. You really need to get into their head about how to get the best from them. And to do that, you need to know them. I also spent a lot of time with neuroscientists, and one of the things I've really realized is that, and it leads into this motivation question, is you need to be able to demonstrate to people that you care about them. And because your limbic system in your brain makes a decision, like you're all making decisions listening to me, of whether you want to believe me or not. And once you've moved to that position in your mind about liking me or not liking me, it's very hard, even with me logically giving you answers, to shift you from that position. So I'm hoping more of you like me in the room than dislike me. But to demonstrate how important this is in motivating people, and in a workplace hybrid sense, is you need to demonstrate you care. Get people in the right space, in an energy state in their brain, because feelings really matter. Like they really, really matter. For a long time, we've thought, oh, they don't really matter in business. It's all about logic and process and blah, blah, blah. But it really matters. It's a big subject, and Ahmed talked about it. I think you need a system. You need a system to understand what's most important to people in their experiences. That means, what do they need to be productive? What in the physical environment really matters to their personal sense of productivity or pride? What in the service features and the things that you allow them to sort of access when they come into this space is important to them? You know, coffee is more than a hot liquid, right? It's a sign that you care for your employees, as an example. And then what are the things that support their work activity? So worker complexity, how many people are in their team, the tasks they have to complete in a day, etc. How can they hire all those resources? So again, start with caring, and then have a system to break down what's most important to them, to know what great is. I realize that's a long answer, so
No, please continue.
forgive me. So
more people in the room like you, so I think we're good.
yeah, and involve experts in helping you get to that point as well. So it's one thing to say Grab is a great, fantastic HQ, and I don't know what your other buildings look like. And if you compare them to one another, you may get an answer. But how does that compare to Uber? How does that compare to other tech companies? You need to understand what great looks like for other workplace experiences to understand how does this compare. So again, coming from a client side originally, I would encourage you all, if you're thinking about it, to employ an expert to help you understand your portfolio and your employees' needs. Yeah. Sorry, I've said a lot.
No, don't apologize. That's why you're here, Alex. Ronnie, would you like to add on anything for this discussion topic as well?
Sure. So the questions here is that, how do you engage and motivate your employee in a hybrid work environment? Now, a very quick answer before I share more color is that I don't think there is any difference in how you engage or motivate, whether it's going to be on-site, remote, or hybrid workforce. Yeah. Essentially, I think some of the fundamentals that we all know about that in order to engage, in order to motivate, is that first, is that you must have a clarity in terms of what their job is all about. How do they actually contribute in their jobs to where the company's success? Two is that they need the support they need in terms of growth and development to do a good job. And last but not least is that they need to be affirmed, they need to be recognized, they need to be rewarded. So I guess all of us learned that. However, this is where, I realized that there is in fact one thing that has been taken for granted for years, turns out to be magnified and of critical importance in the last 2 years, especially with the remote working and now with the hybrid. It's about these words that again we take for granted. It's called empathy. Now this is where Alex talked about caring for the employee. Now, when I talk about empathy, I refer to that. Now, working with your colleagues, working with your teammates, working with your reports, and you yourself, every one of us are going through this journey very differently. And I want to talk about empathy down here is that it's about seeking to really understand the different situations and the different journey each one of them are going through. Seeking to understand, caring about where they are, like what Alex said, and what do you do at the company, as a leader, as the managers, as the colleagues to support them. Okay, I give you some personal example. Is that I lead a team that is across the globe. But one of the things that I find that is very common across my teammates is that as all of them comes out of the 2 years of the pandemic, in fact, a lot of them have been working harder. Like what Amit says, is like in the process that you spend all the time working because you can't drink, you can't socialize. You spend a lot of time meeting, you spend a lot of time in Zoom. In fact, to the extent that a lot of them are starting to burn out. I'm not sure how many of you noticed that you're starting to see your teammate, the people around you burning out. Okay. So this is where I say that knowing where they are, thinking about how do you, caring about them and thinking about how do you, as their managers, as the colleague, at the companies, right, to be able to support them so that they don't go to the path of burning out. Okay. And particularly even for my teammates, we decided to come together to join the stepathon. Like for example, our companies have this event to say that, hey, we have a campaign. We love more Grabbers to come together to join this stepathon.
Oh,
So
is it
in this case,
our
right,
Grab Steps challenge? Is
that's
it?
right. Grab Step Challenge. In this case, right, we know that the more you move, it helps towards better health, and that will also give you more fuels and more energies that will prevent you from being burnt out. So in this case, right, as a colleagues, I say that let's do it together. And in some cases, we actually compete and say that I do 1,000 steps more than you. See how you're gonna do that to me tomorrow. So in other words, like we spur each other on. Okay. Likewise, another case that I want to share is that we're starting to see also many of the colleagues, especially if they are doesn't belong in Singapore, they need to be with their families. So this is where you want to see ways to support them to be able to continue to remote workings, right, to be with their families. So in this case, right, it turns out to have a hybrid workforce, but more importantly, that every one of them are in a different place, going through the journey differently, and this is where empathy is going to be critical moving forward, which I thought we took for granted for many years. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie, and thank you, Alex. I think the common thread across both of your sharings is that first you have to have connection first, right? Understand where your teammates are, and then only you can better understand what their direct and indirect motivations are before coming up with the solution. So thank you very much. And on that note, we're going to go into a time of Q&A. So we'd love to hear from all of you in the room, as well as those on the webinar with us. So here are some instructions for the Q&A. You can either scan this QR code that you see on the screen right now, or you can visit www.slido.com and just put in the code 7267287. All right. We'll give you a bit of time to go ahead and scan the QR code. And let's take a look at our Slido questions as well. Thank you, Alex. All right, the first question is, in your opinion, what are the pros and cons in working from home? Are there more pros or cons? I think I'm going to give this question to Alex first. What are your pros and cons?
Again, well, it's hard to generalize, isn't it?
Really hard.
The truth is everyone is different, and it's a very dry subject, but you need to understand everybody at an individual level when it comes to the pros and cons of working from home. I think one of the big pros, though, generally speaking, has been that, and it's created a real challenge for people to return to the office, is that in the home, you have complete control of your domain. You can decide to, largely speaking, work when you need to work, have coffee when you want to have coffee, exercise when you want to exercise, rest when you want to rest, spend time with family when you want to spend time with family. And all of the factors, if I look at one of the companies I've worked with a lot throughout the years, and I'm only saying that because I don't push any product at all. It's simply from the point of maybe hoping that I might be able to be in your shoes and help you. But one of the companies I'd worked with was a company called Leaseman. They don't sell a single product. They simply help you to understand how your employees are relating to their workplace experience, and have about 1.3 million people in terms of their experiences within their database. So the largest sort of database in the world. And I think what comes across in that data is that home is definitely the new competitor to the office. And the fact that you have complete control over your domain at home, but you don't have in your office, is really going to be something that is going to keep you more at home. I think other things, again, it's the danger of generalizing, but younger people are half as likely to have the resources that they really need to be able to work adequately from home in the way they would really love to if they had the choice. The fact is, they have a harder time than older people. They have less resources. You know, they've got a much bigger hill to climb than perhaps people in my age. You know, I'm in my mid-50s, and you know, I've got more resources. Yeah, it's tough for them. So we really need to be mindful of their needs. At the same time, they want to be able to work remotely because they like it, and they're much more adept than, largely speaking, than older people at being able to do that. Again, it's a generalization. So I think, again, I'd come back to the point that everyone's an individual. It is important to know what their specialization is. It's important to know whether they are creative in a creative role or a process-driven role, and that will affect whether they may be better suited to work from home or not. I think the size of their team is a factor. What's interesting is for the companies that have asked people their work experience from home, they didn't phrase it in a way that they asked the individual to imagine perhaps the youngest or the weakest member or the member in their team that needs the help the most as to whether they should, you know, what factor how would that affect whether they worked at home or at the office. I think if you'd asked a we question over a me question, you'd have probably got a different response. You know, me, I don't need to be in the office, but when I look at my team, actually, there are many people and many of my team that need my sponsorship to get ahead in their career. So actually, I need to be in the office more. So again, treat everybody as an individual and know what their needs are. Lots of pros in working from home, and of course some cons.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. It's just about understanding where everyone does their best work, right? Definitely not an easy task, especially if you're a people manager. Let's move on to our second question. All right, with the increasing number of sales channels and online tools available, are in-person meetings still necessary, like the one we're having today? So maybe this question is for Gareth and Amit. Maybe Gareth, you'd like to go first.
Right. So firstly, I think it would definitely still be necessary. We have spoken about, you know, how this COVID situation and this hybrid work has evolved. It has gone to the point that it is more of a work-life, instead of a work-life balance, it has evolved into a work-life integration. Like some of the points we have said early on, it is a lot about I can be in a coffee shop, I can be out with my family, right? But I still am connected to work. So what this integration has done is, firstly, it has expanded the possibilities of how you can work. Instead of, we were saying earlier on, you have to be in an office, you have to be in a meeting room. And more importantly, when it comes to sales channels, right? Sales, because of the last 2 years, everyone realized for the commercial teams, right? You don't have to do a face-to-face. And what this has further expanded for a lot of corporations is the potential is no longer just, for example, Singapore regional restrictions. It is a global restriction. Or rather, the boundaries have been broken down. So when you look at this, the way that's been integrated, the in-person meetings that we know in the past have now evolved very differently for everyone, whether you have which life stage you're in. And more importantly, right, it has no longer become a fad. Now it's more of a necessity. It is a norm that a lot of us in this room, we are here at this forum, but we're still connected to our emails, on top of connected to our friends and families, right? So this norm will always be there. And more importantly, it has become a necessity in today's world. In the past, when you go to work, right, it may be, okay, I have a meeting, I cannot meet you for coffee and what have you. Nowadays, is as long as I can I'm connected. I can arrange my schedule around it. I'm still connected. And more importantly, for those, especially those who are doing regional or global roles, you are connected 24/7, not by choice. One of the speakers said, we are working more today, which is true, but we're also living our life more today. We are more connected in two different senses, personally and professionally. That's how the online tools have integrated our lives.
Oh, I love that. And Amit, anything you'd like to add on?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll probably have follow-up questions, but just to keep it to this forum, I think that there's a couple of things around this. One, in-person meetings, I believe it really depends on, what is, what is your offering to customers or what is your offering to your clients, right? So of course, small value items, probably not needed. High value items, absolutely. In this region, I'm a great believer, in this region that in-person meetings add a lot of trust and credibility to the discussions that you have. Now, if you're talking about in-person meetings for internal teams, for example, again, I think, absolutely critical, especially when you've got a young team that you're trying to develop or a team that you're trying to develop or get them to collaborate and learn from each other. I think doing them in person, of course, it is necessary. I also believe that I think that there's going to be a combination of the two things, right? So, you may not specifically, a few years ago, you would jump on a plane to Hong Kong or Indonesia or wherever to go and meet a customer. Maybe that's not so necessary now, where you may be able to do the first 2 or 3 engagements virtually and then be able to go and meet them. But I think that certainly the tools, like I said, have been available before the pandemic, right? So there's no change in that. But I personally believe that meetings are very, very necessary, especially if you're trying to engage your people, engage your teams, or engage your customers. I certainly think that there is a need for in-person.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Let's move on to our next question. All right, with companies offering a hybrid work arrangement, how can we motivate employees who are required to work on site? They have no choice. Okay, I think this question is going to go to Ronnie first, and then we'll come to Alex. The steps challenge, huh, Ronnie?
Yeah,
that really
there is a
motivates
tip
us.
from Amit. For the last 2 years, we have been working remotely. And now when the companies tell you, come back to work, you must come back to work, how do you feel?
Like you have no choice.
You have no choice. Now, the way that I wanted to tackle this question is, you look at it, it's a change. Companies for years have been introducing changes. Okay, and if you look at moving them back from remote working to on-site working, it's a change that company is introducing. Then in that case, I would say that there is an opportunity for us at the company to look into how do we enroll our employee into this change. And I think fundamentally we learned that as part of change management, the way to enroll anybody into the change journey is to over-communicate the benefits and start looking into the opportunities to be able to survey to them, right? There are indeed more benefit of this change. In this case, if you work on site. Now, so let me give one example in terms of how do you want to actually introduce the kind of benefits. Okay. Now, going back to my very first questions that I was asked as to, would hybrid be here to stay? I say yes, that was a short answer. And the color that I've shared is that the data point, that survey that was done with the employee, and not just Grab's employee, but in fact, sharing notes with many of the HR colleagues, even like Garrett, I would say that a lot of data points, employees say that, yes, they want a space to meet in proximity, to gather in proximity, to be able to collaborate, to be able to socialize, or at least to see their colleagues. So having said that, right, in actual fact, this is what employees also see as benefit. So at the company, then there is the opportunity for you to then be able to ensure that you work towards that, bring them on site. I give an example in terms of why I look forward to coming to Grab today. Not just about spending time with you, In fact, I'm glad that this opportunity that I get a chance to meet up with many of you. I get to be able to share and learn about different perspectives. The other thing I'm looking forward to on a weekly basis is that right after this, we got a trainer in the gym that is going to get us through a 45 minutes of workout.
Yes, we do.
Yes. So in other words, that like what Alex says, that I can exercise alone at home, no issue. I have all the dumbbell. But exercising with teammates together is kind of different, isn't it? You get the kind of energy, you get the kind of camaraderie, you get to sort of push each other along towards the well-being journey. So in other words, companies get a chance to think about, hey, how do we ensure that we actually strengthen that benefits to bring employees on board so that they can be able to ensure that they take care of their well-being. And in this case, and that will make them more productivity. And that will also build camaraderie with the employee. So in other words, think about some perks that you can do, right, that will help towards that. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that think of it as the change journey, enroll your employee, overemphasize and communicate on the benefits and see what as a company in terms of opportunity to strengthen the benefits.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And before we go into it, I just want to clarify also that Grab is not a totally fitness-oriented company. There are other things we do to encourage them to come back. But yes, Steps Challenge and Gym are
It's
definitely
just
part of it. Two
perk.
examples. Yes, Alex.
I didn't bring my gym gear, so I can't do that with you later. I think the simple answer to it is for people that have to come back and work on site, you have to provide them with an amazing experience. And to do that, you need to know what's important to them, what really matters to them. And you need to be able to, from the physical environment to the service features within it, to the things that they need in order to complete their task, you need to know what that is. Let's call them experience drivers. And they need to be able to hire them, much in the same way when you want to go from A to B with a Grab car. It's intuitive, it's easy, it's a great experience, and you get to rate it. So when it comes to the workplace, you know, if you want to keep, and people have to come back here, those things that they intuitively need to be able to find and hire and use to get their work done will help them reduce their stress and make the work-life experience more important. Actually, there was one point that just came to mind as I saw there was no, in the survey, the manager, nobody was coming back for the manager.
No one was really excited about that, Alex.
And
how can we motivate the
I
managers?
wonder if I may, because it ties in with Gareth's point and Ahmed and Ronnie. In 2016, I was my first foray as an experience manager to try to understand what and how people were feeling. It was 100,000 people. It was a really great company I worked with Standard Chartered Bank. I don't know whether anybody's dialed in today, but know that it was always a special company in my heart. And it was a privilege to work there. And we started to understand workplace experience. And so we engaged them to understand the experience drivers. And we bet, I hope you'll allow me to tell the story. Many of us had bet as experts that the UK office would be the best office in the world among our 1,600 properties in 66 countries. And actually, it was nowhere near the top of the ranking. And we'd completely underestimated, which just tells me, don't think you're the expert. You don't be fooled. The customer will always tell you. And that was because there's different needs and different expectations, etc. Just because it was the best building, we thought. But one little side story that came out of it, that at the time we didn't spend a lot of time on, I subsequently became really interested in this in the years that followed, and I've stayed in very close contact with Standard Chartered Bank at the organizational development level. Great chap called David Wilson. I don't know whether he's listening today, but what we realized was a lot of the great experiences that came from the workplace that came in the top 10 came from properties that had a substandard physical environment. And that made no sense to us at all. We were asking people physically and the service features and getting their work done, what their experience was. And these were So these buildings and these people in these buildings were telling us this was a great workplace experience. And it was knocking it out of the park. We just couldn't tie it together. The buildings were not great. Actually, subsequent to that, when we looked into the impact of leadership we looked into My Voice. Actually, it came to light that many of those buildings that were in the top 10 had the best leaders in the organization within them. And the hypothesis at the end of that, or I concluded, and I use this as an analogy, and I've said this to people who are listening from JLL today, that they may remember me saying this, is that having a great boss makes the coffee taste better. The coffee, meaning metaphorically speaking, the office experience. It's really true. People's experience of their manager impacts and affects how they feel about their relationship with the physical environment. And so, to Gareth, and I think this is where a new employee value proposition is needed, where we redefine what employees' new needs are post-pandemic. We can remember them, because most HR people can't remember what they promised employees. It's amazing. You ask them, employees can't remember. I don't know whether you can remember the 5 things you were promised when you were joining your companies, but I certainly couldn't. So you need to remember what they are. And then each function, from the business to HR and technology and property or real estate, needs to understand what it's measuring, either directly or indirectly, that has an impact on that promise, because that will affect your engagement. And then, of course, you need to look at what the customer benefits are. So again, long answer, little personal story, but you need to create an amazing experience for employees.
Yeah, I love that people matter more and they make the coffee taste better, for sure. I think we have time for one last question. So let's take a look at it. How do we address the great resignation and what can we do to mitigate it? Gareth, you brought this up earlier. Would you like to take this question?
Right. So the great resignation is just another word for it, for people, a sort of a expanded number of people resigning, but it has been happening across the globe, different industries, different attrition rates. I think what we need to remember is that what we have said seems to come down to one word: what the connection. Based on the survey that we've done for Icebreaker, my hypothesis, if you take away the manager, everyone will come back to office. Right?
I think we do need the managers.
But what it basically tells me, going back to the survey, is the mitigation is how the HR people, together with the leaders of the organization, customize and understand what the people needs in alignment to where the business is going. A lot of times, while we were connecting online, we forgot how it feels like to be here to connect face to face. That is what a lot of people are missing. And we also forget what is the connection of the person, the employee, to the team, to the environment. Like what I can observe, that most of the Grab people are very happy coming back. They like the connection, there's activities. We forgot about that. And traditional companies, now I used to come from a manufacturing plant, that you come in, you clock in, the only connection you have is with the machine, right? Why people come back is because of canteen breaks. They gossip, they talk about the bosses, they talk about the company, they talk about the latest news, right? So how do you firstly foster this connection? I think this is the first level. Every company is different, everyone is different, right? Like what Alex brought up, every department or business unit is also different. The second portion is how to mitigate it is, what is your talent pipeline? When I say the talent pipeline, is not having people that you can, backfill or recruit, but what is the culture that these talents coming in is going to develop the company to? With this change, right, from pre-pandemic to today endemic, the people coming back, the people you're going to recruit, will shape or shift the culture. Like an example I like to give my team in Southeast Asia is that from January, since we started opening up bit by bit, until today, the common question from every candidate that we interview is, what is the culture of the company? Like every candidate. And that gives you a very good, a guiding point, what people are looking for. The follow-up question to what a lot of candidates ask, what is the company's direction on hybrid work, right? So if you don't have this policies, thoughts, or direction, when the company alone, you already lose half the battle. So to mitigate it, I think you need to ask very deep questions with your management, your business. What are we trying to create here post-pandemic? Who are the people we want to bring in? How do we want these people to feel connected, not only to work, but also to the teams and, well, to the zero response for managers, right? So I'll say, to sum up, 3 things. First, what culture are you creating that I want to come back to work? Second is, how is the manager, how is the business going to sustain it? And thirdly, how do I balance it? To give these employees, staff, leaders, the ability to integrate and balance their lives. Long answer to a short question.
That's why we're here. Well, please join me in appreciating our amazing panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I hope we got to cover as many questions as we did. And thank you so much for submitting your questions. Right now we're just going to invite Ronnie, Gareth, and Alex to take a seat off stage. And we're going to pass the time over to Amit, who's going to share with us an overview of GrabForBusiness. So if I could just invite the rest off stage, and we'll pass the time over to Amit.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess, look, I'm not going to take too long of everyone's time on this segment. I just want to understand, obviously everyone in here will know what Grab does, right, from a B2C perspective. Hands up if you are clear on what GrabForBusiness does from a B2B perspective. Okay, so only a few. Okay. I guess, the tie-up around hybrid work from home, employee engagement, and GrabForBusiness is part of what we're talking about today. And the reason why we brought this topic up is really because we've had a number of customers or a number of clients that have approached us to ask us for help in terms of how they can engage their employees, how we can support them in their return to office strategy. And again, this is not the one-stop solution that helps. We heard from all of the gentlemen here around how there are multiple facets of how we can motivate employees, how we can support the return to office strategy as well. I'll give you an example. In the Philippines, the government mandated all of the BPOs to be basically back in the office. They had to have their people back in the office. We had a number of large organizations approach us in terms of how we could help them support that. And again, this is not just about getting people back to the office. We spoke earlier about how it's important for us to empathize with people. And I'll give you an example. If you've been working from home for the last couple of years, and then you're suddenly asked to be back in the office, or expected to be back in the office, I should say. Some of the greatest assets of people today is the time that they have with, or for themselves, or the balance that they have. So the time that they have with their families, or the time that they have for social activities versus the time that they have at work. And one of the things that we allow our transportation service to do is to get people from point A to B in the fastest way possible. Outside of that, there are a number of solutions that we provide that you use as a consumer today. So food delivery, mart delivery, and express, which is our parcel delivery, all are ingrained in our GrabForBusiness app. Essentially, it's a portal. So can we just have the next slide? Essentially, it's a portal. So all of these services you will know: transport, delivery, food, and mart. And what it allows an organization to do is to manage those under one under one administrative portal. Two-way benefits. One, of course, for the administrative side to save time on administrating any sort of transport rides that your employees are having, and from an employee side, the time that it gives them back in submitting claims is all automated through the portal as well. So how do we help them with the return to office strategy? Like I mentioned before, the portal allows you, one of the things that we're working with organizations on is how do we position this as an employee benefit? So working with HCM leaders and tech leaders to talk about how this can be part of an employee benefit and support the return to office strategy. The solution, we will reach out to you, or you may reach out to us if you want to have a more in-depth discussion or demo of the solution. We'll be more than happy to do that. But like I said, there are multiple ways that we're helping. And the other way, we have a solution which is Grab Gifts. Alex, can we have the next slide? Grab Gifts you may have seen on the B2C channel, but again, Grab Gifts really are primarily used for marketing campaigns, but now we're also seeing them being used as an employee engagement and an employee rewards tool as well. So certainly, if you're keen to understand more about how we can help, then we'll be in contact with you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Amit, for that sharing. And we hope you consider using Grab4Business for your needs as well. And if you have any questions about Grab4Business, or want to get in touch with the Grab4Business team, we'll put their contacts up here, and I do believe they are in the room as well. So do reach out to Francis and Diona as well. So thank you so much. Please help me once again to appreciate all of our panelists and our guest speakers. We're going to say goodbye to our online audience right now. Thank you for those of you who are joining us on Zoom. We hope to see you in person very, very soon. All right. Thank you so much.